We're talking transportation and highway bill in the House of Representatives this week. We'll talk about that right after this.
Hi, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Here's your host, Representative Rick Crawford.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. We're talking about transportation, trying to reauthorize the highway bill this week in the House of Representatives. And as most of us in Arkansas know, we recognize the need for infrastructure investment. And the transportation bill is critical. It's very important for us in Arkansas. Just think about I-40 as an example. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life when Interstate 40 was not under construction. And it seems like we get into that bottleneck around West Memphis and, there's always construction going on. Well, it's important that we get these projects funded appropriately and get the work done. And we took a pretty big step in that direction with MAP 21 back in 2012. In fact, that was the real first kind of foray into a modern highway bill. And we did a lot of streamlining back then. It hasn't been that long ago, but it was relatively short term and gets back to a problem about how we really need to address these highway bills with more of a long vision. But I will say that MAP 21 back in 2012 did an awful lot to streamline the process and sort of eliminate some of the red tape, some of the environmental constraints that make it difficult to build a road. So from concept to completion, a highway project, instead of taking 15 years, the reforms that we put in MAP 21 might take that down to about 7 years, which is considerably more manageable and makes it easier at that point to make your money do more. And so we accomplished a lot in MAP 21, but it's time to reauthorize the highway bill. And of course, folks in Arkansas know, think about US 67. We would like for US 67 to be an interstate at some point. It was built to be an interstate, but that road, that's our link between Northeast Arkansas and Little Rock. It's pretty important. And so we want to recognize that we need to get those projects completed. And quite frankly, US 67 is an example. There's about a 43-mile stretch just right there at Cache, where 226 intersects with 67, going north up to the Missouri line, that has not been completed to interstate standards. And that's an impediment to our economic growth. So let's get back to these short-term patches. We've already passed 3 short-term patches this year alone, and they don't give our businesses and our road builders and our local economies the kind of assurance they need to really operate smoothly, make the kind of investments that do create economic impact. And so this week, what we're doing is we're taking up sort of the template of the Senate bill, kind of a framework. The House has been working up. We actually marked it up last week, and it is a 6-year authorization. I've actually introduced 2 amendments that are pretty pertinent to Arkansas, and we have a number of trailer manufacturers, not only in our district but throughout the state. One of the provisions of the highway bill would allow for manufacturers to deliver trailers to the retailers in tandem. That is to say, 2 trailers at a time. Up to this point, you run into trouble. You can get in trouble if you're trying to pull doubles, as they say there. But our amendment would permit 2 light or medium duty trailers to be towed together only when they're empty and only when they're being delivered to the retailer. Right now, you can only legally tow 1, and so we're glad that we got that included. And of course, anybody that lives in Northeast Arkansas knows that US 63, as you're on US 63 from Interstate 55 all the way to Jonesboro, you're looking at the signs that say the future I-555, and that's been that way for 20 plus years. An interstate designation would do an awful lot for our economy in Northeast Arkansas, not just in Jonesboro, but everywhere along US 63. Most economic developers, new businesses that are looking to locate in Northeast Arkansas want to check that box that says interstate access. That's one of the first things that most of these companies look for. Most economic developers will tell you that. The impediment for us, quite frankly, has been about a 3-mile stretch. You're driven on US 63. You know that from Painway to Mark Tree, there is a floodway, or what we refer to as the sunken lands there. It's only about a 3-mile stretch. But if we were to call that interstate at this point in time, that would mean there could be no agricultural traffic, which means that if you want module trucks or other agricultural traffic, logging trucks, what have you, they would have to take a 90-mile detour around the sunken lands to continue their progress. And not only is that cumbersome and costly for those individuals that have to drive those vehicles, think about how much that costs the taxpayer to create an alternate route. Now, we've already looked at this. Price tag of about $30 to $50 million, depending on who you talk to build that separate access road that spans the floodway. And we're only talking about a 3-mile stretch. So working with folks in the state, we arrived at what we thought was a pretty sweet solution to save the taxpayers $50 million and use that investment elsewhere where it can do more good. And that is simply to ask for a waiver on that stretch of US 63 that would then be the Interstate 555, allowing for agricultural traffic during daylight hours only. And of course, these vehicles would have to be appropriately placarded and so on. We've got safety concerns and we want to address those safety concerns. But during daylight hours only, those agricultural vehicles would be able to use that 3-mile stretch of interstate. And we think that's a pretty good common sense, good governance solution to saving somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million. And it's in the Senate bill. It's now in our bill in the House. And so we'll go to conference with that. And we will have really, I think, done a good job in addressing some of the issues that are most relevant to Arkansas. There's other things as well, but those two I wanted to highlight particularly. We weren't successful in a couple of other things, but on those I think we've done an awful lot to improve our economy and help businesses. And when we do that, we're talking about job growth and the economic conditions improve in Arkansas. So I'm happy with that, and hopefully we'll see before the end of this year, we'll see that bill successfully conferenced with the Senate and then sent to the President and signed into law. And so having said that, I'm going to leave it with you. We appreciate you joining us for Tune In again. And also want to remind you, if you want to weigh in, we encourage you to do that. Just tweet your questions or comments at Tune-In AR1, at Tune-In AR1. Find us on Facebook. Check us out on the web, crawford.house.gov. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.